All right, and welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. Today we have our Thursday night previews and our starts and sits of the week. So we're going to kick this right off. I have Seattle going into Dallas to play. It's going to be tough. We saw the outcome of their last game against the Niners on Thanksgiving. I'm not saying it's going to be an exact one of that game, but I think it's going to be pretty tough. It looks like they're going to be without Ken Walker again in this one. So it's going to be all Zach Charbonnet. If you have Walker and Charbonnet, you're going to be without a running back. I think Charbonnet's okay. I think he'll get targets out of the backfield. I'm not sure how great of a week it'll be, but he will get volume. Yeah. That's at least better than we know for some running backs. Yeah. As far as Geno Smith goes, not really someone I'm excited to start this week. It's just a tough start. I mean, Cowboys have been extremely good on the defensive end, not necessarily looking to start quarterbacks against them. They've only given up 167 passing yards per game, putting them at second total in the NFL. So it's going to be tough. I mean, I'd like to think that DK and Tyler Lockett will fare a bit better this week than they did in their last outing, which both of them weren't really able to do too much. But I'm not expecting big numbers from anyone.
Yeah.
I don't really think Smith and Jigba is startable this week, but I mean, Lockett and DK, given the buys,
you kind of
have to.
Yeah.
But and maybe Jason Myers. Seahawks seem to kick a lot of field goals, so I think he's a decent option. But other than that, that's really about it.
Yeah, and I mean, on the Cowboys side of the ball, like Schiff had just mentioned, with the buys especially, a lot of these guys are just must-starts. Like Dak, you're going to have to start, obviously. He's been incredibly hot these past 6-7 weeks. He's the QB 3 currently in the fantasy season. That's kind of unbelievable. Tony Pollard, he's been ramping it up the past 2 weeks, mainly because he's got in the end zone, but he's also getting, 4 or 5 targets out the backfield. So you're going to have to fire up Tony Pollard. CeeDee Lamb is an obvious start. And then we get to Brandon Cooks. And in a 3 receiver, if you want to throw him at the flex, I like it. It's risky, but it's a risk that could pay off pretty substantially for you. He could have a very solid week. If there is another, like Gallup, I'm obviously not thinking about Tolbert, Turpin. No. Brandon Cooks in a 3 receiver league, I can see him as a flex option. A 2 receiver, I think you will probably have better options, but in a 3, that's at least something I'm considering. And then Jake Ferguson. It's especially again with the buys, there's very solid tight ends on bye this week. Like Isaiah Likely, who stepped in for Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid. It's thinner at the tight end position. He's a guy you're going to have to start this week. He's only got 4 catches in the past 2 weeks, but he's been targeted 8 times. It's just one of those games where, honestly, if you have Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson, I don't think you can start them both. I don't know if we're going to be able to see both of them succeed to a startable level. But you just, with the buys this week, you have to start Jake Ferguson. You have to. And really the same with the kicker, Brandon Aubrey. He's getting a start. He's currently the field goal kicker number 3 fantasy-wise on the season, and then Dallas defense number 1 yet again in fantasy. After what we saw the Niners do to the Seahawks, the Cowboys are going to get at Geno just as well.
Yes, I believe so. And with that, I think we can go into our starts and sits. And if you wanted to lead us off with the quarterback position.
Yeah, the quarterback I have sitting is Matthew Stafford at Cleveland. He's kind of lower on this list, but again, huge bye week. A lot of QBs missing. A lot of teams have two QBs on roster. So you might be looking at only a couple options on the waiver wire, and I don't think Matt Stafford should be your choice. He's coming off his best week of the season, where he put up 24 fantasy points against Arizona, but outside of that, his next highest week is 17. And he's now playing Cleveland. He hasn't gotten the ball to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua very well the past like 3-4 weeks. I do not like this matchup.
Yeah.
And the start of the week is going to be Kyler Murray. I know he's playing Pittsburgh. Some Cardinals have been banged up. Kyler Murray just has that rushing upside that we love with fantasy quarterbacks. In his 3 weeks since he returned, he's had 18, 22, and 20. Even if the Steelers are able to get to him, and even like cause a he throws a pick or two, he loses a fumble, he can still get you 18 to 20 off the rushing alone. He gets you 40 yards and a touchdown. It's 10 points right there, not even including his passing. So I like Kyler.
Yeah, I agree. I think for my start of the week, I'm going to go with your waiver wire pickup of the week, which is Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going up against the Houston defense, which surprisingly this year has been very generous against the pass and fairly stingy against the run.
Yeah.
The Russ has been getting it done through the air. Cortland Sutton has looked great. Looks like Jerry Jeudy is primed to play in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Russ is a good option, especially compared to a lot of the rest of the quarterbacks on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
My sit, I have to go Baker Mayfield. Carolina has been the opposite of the Houston defense and fairly stingy against the pass and very generous against the run. We have seen them be very willing to feed Rachaad White, and I genuinely think the scoring from this game is going to come from Rachaad White. I just don't see Baker getting too high of a score in this one, genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that's really all I got for the quarterbacks.
Yeah. And to go to running backs again, I like to go. I guess some of the times I like to go, spicy. This isn't necessarily a crazy take, but Zach Charbonnet is my sit of the week at Dallas. Again, with the buys, he's probably a guy you have to start. If you are deep enough at the running back position to keep him on the bench, I would do so. He's scored 10 points and 12 points as the lead back these past 2 weeks, but that is mainly because of his pass catching capability. He's had 4 catches for 18, 6 for 22, 4 for 11. In a week that most of us really need to win, if your running back plays on Thursday and gets you 10 fantasy points, I'm not going to be in love with that. So he's a guy I like to shy away from, but again, you may not have that luxury. I never thought I would have this guy as my must start, but it is Najee Harris against the Cardinals, who are averaging 24 fantasy points a game, giving up 2 running backs. Again, him and Jaylen Warren are going to split snaps. Najee's going to get a majority of the carries. He's probably going to get the goal line work. And he's been catching a couple passes out the backfield. Najee, surprisingly, the past 5-6 weeks has been all double digits. He's a guy that it feels so you have to start this week.
I guess so, huh?
It's ugly, dude, but it's a terrible week. There's so many people gone.
Yeah. My start of the week, he's going up against a defense that has been very stout against the run this year. But with the injuries that this team has, the guys that are questionable, Alvin Kamara should be primed to be a locked-in RB1 this week. I mean, it just does not look like they're going to have a lot of guys out there. I mean, Rashid Shaheed right now is still questionable. I have not yet seen updates on Chris Olave, but
yeah,
Rashid Shaheed didn't practice today. So The New Orleans healthy wide receivers on the active roster are A.T. Perry, Lynn Bowden, and Keith Kirkwood. So to me, that screams big Alvin Kamara game.
Yeah.
Somebody that I have a tough time with this week is Jerome Ford, going up against a Rams defense that's been very good against the run.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's been solid, scoring literally 11.9 points in the past 3 weeks, excuse me, just like it's like Derek said, we're at a point in the season where I'm looking for a bit more upside. It's really tough in a matchup that's good against running backs. You know that he's going to split most of the ground game with Kareem Hunt. Now, his day might be saved in the passing game, but it's just he hasn't gotten the 1 week he got into the end zone against Pittsburgh. He didn't really do anything else. I just haven't seen anything too explosive from him. He's solid, but some teams are in a position where I need a big week out of someone, and he's very consistently got around 12 points for the last 4 weeks. So
You know who's probably going to start for them?
Joe Flacco.
Hey, in all seriousness, Ravens royalty. Like, in all seriousness.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on.
he had a perfect postseason, dog.
Yeah. Shout out Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
All right. We'll go to the receivers, and mine are going to be Seattle wide receivers. The 49ers secondary is their weak spot. And Seattle was not able to expose that due to Geno being constantly pressured. I feel the same situation's going to happen. Again, it's just another one of those tough ones where you saw DK get completely held in check last week. If you start DK and he gives you 7 fantasy points, how are you going to feel about the rest of the week coming forward? Again, all the buys. We actually have the dude in first place in our league who has the luxury of, in a 3 receiver with a flex, keeping DK on the bench, which is a luxury I'm sure not a lot of us have. So him, Tyler Lockett, guys, most people are probably having to start in a 2 receiver though. I like shying away from him. That's just how I feel on it. And my bounce back receiver, Adam Thielen. He's had 2 absolutely dud weeks. Not back to back, his first week of the season, then this past week. They're playing Tampa Bay, who gives up 26 fantasy points a game to wide receivers, which is the 4th worst in the NFL. The Panthers offense, I have no hope in, but if they are going to throw the ball to one guy, I'd say it is Adam Thielen. They did just fire their coach, and we'll see how that affects things, but Adam Thielen is a guy he's the only one there. He's the only real threat as of now for the Panthers, so he's a guy I can't keep on the bench.
Okay. For my sit of the week, I'm going to have to go with Chris Godwin. They are going up, like I said, against Carolina, who's been tough against the pass. Chris Godwin just hasn't been involved in the way that fantasy managers would like him to be. It's been the Mike Evans story. And I just don't see a very productive week out of him this week. He was also limited in practice today and has a questionable tag, so that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
For my start of the week, I'm going to go Brandon Aiyuk against the Philadelphia Eagles. One of the Eagles' weak spots has been their secondary, and Brandon Aiyuk has been solid this year. I can definitely see him finishing, wide receiver 1 territory.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
To get to the tight ends, I mean, this name has come up on both sides of this so many times, but Kyle Pitts is my sit of the week. He's playing the Jets. Kyle Pitts is currently projected the tight end 11, so there is a solid chance that he's a guy you are considering starting this week. He's only hit double digits 2 times this entire season. The Jets are solid on defense. It's the one thing they do have, and Kyle Pitts has just shown me nothing to trust him on a week in, week out basis. So I prefer keeping him on the bench. Honestly, I prefer keeping him on the waiver. I make that someone else's issue. We've said that multiple times in this podcast. Someone else wants to start Kyle Pitts and have him give him 4 points. Let that be their issue. And someone who had a monster week, Pat Freiermuth, he's taken on the Cardinals, who are middle of the pack against tight ends. They only give up 6.3 fantasy points per game to tight ends. Now, what's funny about that is the worst team against tight ends is the Broncos, and they give up 10.1. That'll just tell you the landscape of tight ends as a whole. It's not, 4 points isn't a huge difference, and Arizona's kind of lower middle of the pack, but Pat Freiermuth got 11 targets, caught 9 of them, over 100 yards. He was only 48% rostered when we went over our waivers. He's a guy I feel like you have to smash that start this week.
Yeah. So for my sit of the week, I gotta go Jake Ferguson. It's been, we liked him at first, or for a while, as, week 8 through 10, he was 14 points, 22.1, and 12.6. Last 2 weeks, he's fallen off 6.2 and 4.5 against Carolina. That's kind of admissible due to the fact that teams don't really pass against them like you would like them to.
Mm-hmm.
The 4.5 against Washington is the one that's more concerning. Washington is all around a pretty bad defense.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't involved as much. I think with Brandon Cooks getting fitted into this offense, it really does hurt his involvement. And kind of like you said, I think for Thursday night, I just think there might be better options than to start. Granted, Jake Ferguson might end up getting in the end zone, saving his week. But other than that, it's just been...
You can't trust both of them. I just don't think we can trust both of them to have a good week.
Well,
you gotta
because
pick.
in the weeks where we were really liking what he was doing, in 8 through 10, like I was talking about, he had 4 targets, 10 and 7. The 4 targets, he ended up getting a touchdown, so obviously that saves the week.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2, the 10 and 7. The last 2 weeks, he's gone back to 5 and 3.
Yeah.
3 targets against the Commanders, and I just worry about that, so I have him as my sit.
Mm-hmm.
As my start, I have David Njoku. As we talked about, Joe Flacco is likely to be the quarterback. He is known, especially in his latter years, for a lot of dump-offs to the tight end position and the running back position, which very well could end up saving Jerome Ford's week. But I think the direction that we've seen this offense going in general with David Njoku is he is super reliable, extremely strong.
Yeah.
And he's going to get a whole bunch of targets. I think he's going to have a great week this week. And yeah, he's my start. That'll wrap it up, guys. Like we said, any questions you may have, like always, let us know on any form of media that you guys have us added on. Thank you once again for all of the support. It's that keeps us going. And Derek, go ahead and take it away.
Come back next time. Take more reps with the first team.
Yes, indeed.